Hi class, today's lesson is measures of spread. It is still in the first lesson of the planning document and is from exercise 9C. We will cover range, interquartile range and outliers. You will need to copy these notes into your book. The range is the maximum value minus the minimum value, so the biggest number minus the smallest number, and it measures the spread of all of the data. The interquartile range, also called the IQR, is the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So basically it's Q3 minus Q1. So this is the measure of spread for the middle 50% of data. So to find it, we need to first get the 5-figure summary, then we subtract Q3 minus Q1. An outlier is a number which is much smaller or bigger than the rest, so it's an extreme value. So we need to use a formula to determine if numbers are actually outliers. So they're only outliers if they are smaller than Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR, or if they are bigger than Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. In the examples, I'll show you how to apply these formulas. It is important to note that the range is affected by outliers or extreme values. This is because it just minuses the biggest number minus the smallest, no matter how big or small they are. So it's not a very good measure of spread if there are outliers in the data. The IQR, though, isn't affected by the presence of outliers. Alright, so we'll do some examples. This is our data. And for the purpose of this question, I've already worked out the 5-figure summary. So now we'll find the range. So the range is the maximum minus the minimum, so the biggest number minus the smallest, which is 14 minus 3, which gives us a range of 11. Next I'll work out the interquartile range, which is Q3 minus Q1, so Q3 is 11 and Q1 is 7, giving us an interquartile range of 4. Now for this data, it doesn't look like there's any outliers, which are numbers much bigger or smaller than the rest, so I'm not going to use the formula to bother checking for these. Alright, next example, this is our data set, and I've already worked out the 5-figure summary. I'm not going to write out the range this time, but it would just be 18 minus 1, which would give us a range of 17. I am, however, going to work out the interquartile range, which is Q3 minus Q1. So Q3 is 5.5 and Q1 is 2, giving us an IQR of 3.5. Next, I'm going to work out if there are any outliers. So remember, outliers are numbers that are much bigger or much smaller than the rest of the numbers. So we use the formula either smaller than Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR, or bigger than Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. Okay, so Q1 was 2 minus 1.5 times the IQR, so we already worked out the IQR was 3.5. So if I pop that in the calculator, it equals negative 3.25. And the bigger than one, so Q3 is 5.5 plus 1.5 times the IQR, which is 3.5. Pop that in the calculator and it equals 10.75. So we're looking for numbers that are either smaller than negative 3.25, and there's no number smaller than that, or bigger than 10.75. Yes, 18 is bigger than 10.75, so therefore 18 is an outlier. Our last example. So here's our data, and I've already worked out the 5-figure summary. I'm not going to write out the range, but it would be 17 minus 2, which is 15. I am going to work out the interquartile range though, which is Q3 minus Q1. So 13 minus 9, which equals 4. And I'm also going to work out if there are any outliers. So remember, outliers are smaller than Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR, or they are bigger than Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. Okay, so our Q1 was 9 minus 1.5, and we worked out the interquartile range was 4. Put that in the calculator, and that equals 3. And bigger than, so Q3 was 13 plus 1.5 times the interquartile range, which is 4. So that equals 19. So any numbers smaller than 3 or bigger than 19. So we've got the number 2 in there. So therefore, 2 is an outlier. Oops, outlier. Outlier. But there's no numbers there that are bigger than 19. So just 2 is the outlier. Could you please complete the Measures of Spread worksheet and submit it to MyPanola?